As I say, I feel ever more strongly that we should stop pointing the finger of blame elsewhere, other than, of course, the European Union's lunatic asylum policy of their own. They set it in 2015 when the boats started crossing the Med. I said to Mr Juncker in the European Parliament, if anyone that sets foot on the soil of an EU country is allowed to stay, and don't remember Mrs Merkel encouraging as many as possible, I said, you're storing up great problems for your future. And that was one of the reasons in Brexit I posed with that poster, which caused so much controversy of a huge tide of young men coming into the EU. Well, I didn't know then quite how right I was going to be. But I did think if we voted Brexit, I actually thought we'd get back control of our borders. And it doesn't look as though we have. James Sunderland, Member of Parliament for the Conservative Party for Bracknell, joins me. The point that's being made is that this government, since 2019, since the numbers really began ticking up, this government, firstly Priti Patel repeatedly, and then the Prime Minister at Lid 4 months ago, you've overpromised and underdelivered, haven't you?
Well, the film's pretty impressive. I watched it earlier with you. I think it shows many things. Firstly, the scale of the problem. Gravelines, for example, is 20 miles from Calais. Think how many dunes and ports and boats there are in the middle. But let's not wax lyrical. This is a serious problem, and I suspect that we have underdelivered.
Yeah, no, well, good. Thank you for a bit of frankness. That makes a very refreshing change these days in British politics. But when I look, and you're backing Liz Truss, I understand,
yes,
for the leadership. When Liz Truss is confronted on this, when Rishi Sunak is confronted on this, they say they support the Rwanda plan, they support the Linton-on-News style. Yeah. Centres. The Royal Navy apparently are leaving the Channel. Well, not that they were much good there anyway. It looks like nothing's going to change.
Well, I think what's important is that for the last 2.5, 3 years of this government, we have set a framework whereby we can now make the changes that we need to do. Like Nationality Subordinates Bill, for example, that set the framework for the asylum policy that we now need. But the important thing is we've got a plan. And the plan under both Prime Ministers-elect is the fact that we've got to continue with the Bill of Rights that we've been discussing before. We need to make sure that we make it more difficult for these people to bring traffickers across.
It's all well and good, James. But the British Bill of Rights, all the while we continue to be signed up to the ECHR, and ultimately that court in Strasbourg, that court will have superiority under an international treaty this country signed up to. It will have superiority over the British Bill of Rights. And actually, didn't the Brexit voting public think we were going to be freed of all of this?
Yes, of course, and that is the plan. And what's really important...
Is it?
Yes, it is the plan. What's really important is that the Bill of Rights, when it comes in, will allow us to take back control. We also have a clear framework whereby we can extend that, enhance the legislation if we need to. We need to look at the Modern Slavery Act, we need to look at the Human Rights Act, and that's at the heart of the problem. What we have to do is make sure that we make the changes in law to affect the
Modern Slavery Act. The Modern Slavery Act, another one of the poison pills that the great Mrs May has left for this country. We can deal with that. We can deal with that.
And we are dealing with it.
Yeah, that can be dealt with through legislation in Parliament with a big Conservative majority. No problem. That can be done. The point I'm making is that we are signed up by international treaty to the ECHR, and that has supremacy over anything your government says or does. Would you support us leaving ECHR?
If necessary, yes, I would. What's really important here is an incremental...
How much more necessary can it be than it is now?
Well, what we need to do first of all is put the Bill of Rights in. That's incremental. What we need to do is to fix the bit of the Human Rights Act, Modern Slavery Act, that allows us to be beholden to the European Court of Human Rights. And ultimately, Liz has said, and I'm backing Liz, that if we need to, as a manifesto promise, we can then leave the European Court of Human Rights.
It's just a bit like, isn't it, the Brexit debate? No, we want to stay members of the European Union, we're going to fight for reform, and reform doesn't happen, and in the end, we get Brexit. It costs two Conservative Prime Ministers their... I mean, I enjoyed it, but it cost two Conservative Prime Ministers their position. What I'm saying to you is this. If the approach is, we'll go down this route, and then if it fails, we'll address ECHR, you'll struggle. I mean, you might promise that at the next general election, but by then the electoral damage that will have been done to you by this crisis almost guarantees that you'll lose.
Well, nothing's black and white in politics. There's lots of grey in the middle. We're doing this incrementally. We're doing this appropriately. We're doing it legally. We're setting a framework now that allows the country to take back full control of our borders and to fulfil that promise. And that's what we're going to do.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I tell you what, the traffickers are not doing this incrementally. The traffickers are upping the speed with which people come.
Yeah.
I understand your position. I get the logic of it. I just think the solution will come a little bit too late.
Well, this is taking time. Rightly so, because after years and years of membership of the European Union, you can't just implement a divorce agreement. We are taking back control of our borders, and what's really important now is a strategic shock. What that basically means is we've got to put a shot across the bow now for the traffickers, to the point where people coming to the UK illegally will face the full force of the asylum process, and those that are successful will stay, and those that aren't will go.
I believe it when I see it. All the while we're signed up. All the while we're signed up to ECHR. I don't believe we will see it, but you've made your point very clearly, and thank you for coming on here with us at GB News.